Welcome to the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast with your hosts Griffin Palmer, CJ Hickman, Jason Cabrera, and Ryan Mitchell.
This is going to be a weird intro, but I'm completely thrown off by the fact I'm drinking a Monster like I always do because I love my Monsters, and then I'm drinking what's called an Ultra Sunrise, and it's a completely orange can, and it tastes exactly how it looks, just like pure orange. So, that's something. Anyway, welcome to the show, everybody. This is Tuesday, June 13th, and this is the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast. What was that?
This is how we start things now?
It completely threw me off, but we're going to keep going.
Stream of Consciousness by Griffin Palmer.
I've never had one of these before. It's different. My local grocery chain had these on sale for like $1 each, so I stocked up on a couple, and it's different. It's not your typical energy drink taste. So yeah, anyway, welcome to the show, everybody. I'm your host, Griffin Palmer, and I'm joined over the phone by my co-analysts, CJ the Hitman Hickman and Jason Cabrera. So how are you guys doing today after that interesting intro?
I don't even know what's happening right
now. It's a typical day.
I'm just concerned about you, really, is right now.
Is your grocery store a sponsor now? What was the what's the
Are we
point of
sponsoring
this?
the grocery
No,
store?
it's not,
What are we
because
doing?
if it was, I would have shouted out the name of the chain. But no, it's interesting. Anyway, I assure to you, all the new listeners, that I'm sure there are plenty, because we are getting big spikes in listeners every single show. We are a serious fantasy football podcast. It's just this is a little bit of a different intro. But yeah, we have an amazing show for you guys today. Today we're going to be taking a look at mid-round values that could be absolute steals in this year's upcoming drafts. We're going to be taking a look at the NFL Top 100 reveals from last night. Of course, we're going to be bringing you all the top headlines from around the league, as always. So please make sure you guys subscribe on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Podcast Addict, on YouTube, wherever you are listening or watching right now. We are a year-round podcast every Tuesday and Friday, bringing you all the stuff you need to know going up to and through draft season, of course, through the regular season and the postseason. If you play championship fantasy, the NFL fantasy, whatever, what was that called again? The playoff challenge, that's what it was. Of course, make sure you guys subscribe on Twitter for all the breaking news and really interacting with the show at the FF Fanatics. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. Most importantly, if you want to support the show, you can head over to patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics, where you can get yourself a bunch of cool exclusive perks, including a bonus episode every single week, usually covering the much more advanced and in-depth topics. And of course, if you want to join us in a fantasy football league this year, we have announced for a week now our listener league, and we are doing this through an iTunes review challenge. So again, if you want to challenge us to a game of fantasy football, a season of it, I should say, head over to iTunes, give us a rating, give us a review, subscribe to the show, and we'll pick them at random. Doesn't have to be a 5-star rating, though we greatly appreciate the feedback. If there's something you don't like, let us know. We're not afraid of criticism. And if you want to take that next step, as always, go ahead, send us an email at thefantasyfootballfanatics@gmail.com, or give us your Twitter handle or tweet to us rather at the FF Fanatics, and let us know that you submitted and what format you want the show to be in. So that way, if we pick you, we can backtrack, see what your vote is, because we set this up completely by what everyone who got in last year wanted, and that's the way we're going to set up the league format again this year. It's completely open canvas, could be completely standard, could be something crazy. That's kind of half the fun. So we're going to move right into our top headlines from around the league, and we're going to start with the NFL Top 100 from last year. Obviously, last night, numbers 30 through 21 were revealed. I guess I'll just run through this as we normally do. Number 30 was Earl Thomas, safety for Seattle. He was 66 a year ago. Number 29, Mike Evans, wide receiver for Tampa Bay. He was unrated a year ago. Number 28, Landon Collins, safety for the New York Giants. He was unrated a year ago. Number 27, LaShawn McCoy, running back for the Buffalo Bills. He was 69 a year ago, so big jump there. Number 26, Travis Kelce, tight end for Kansas City. He moved up from 91 a year ago, another big jump. At 25, Joe Thomas, offensive tackle for Cleveland. He actually dropped 2 spots, so that basically stayed where he was. Number 24, Russell Wilson, quarterback from Seattle. He was 17 a year ago, so dropped a little bit. Number 23, Rob Gronkowski, tight end, New England. He dropped a bit from number 9 a year ago. Ben Roethlisberger, quarterback for Pittsburgh. He is 22. He was 21 a year ago, so slight drop as well. And 21, Richard Sherman, cornerback, I should say, Seattle, 20 a year ago. So another 1 spot drop. So guys, what stood out from you on this week's list?
Well, first of all, I'm happy that we got 2 young players that were unranked last year that made their presence in the NFL in Mike Evans and Landon Collins. So I really like that. Shout out to Earl Thomas. I like his game. And then one mind-boggling thing, and I know this is supposed to be projected to this season, but Travis Kelce at 26 and Gronk at 23. That's a little mind scratching to me. I don't get that. Yeah, so I'm gonna turn that over to Jason.
I don't know about projecting forward to this year. This is more just kind of a list of most, popular players. I mean, that's all this really is really a big popularity contest. But yeah. I understand Kelce being as high as he is just because of the way he finished last year. But I think this is a little bit of it's a little bit of a curtain that's kind of drawn in front of people's eyes because the tight end position as a whole last year just stank. So the fact that Travis Kelce did as well as he did, I think that is why he's as high as he is on this list. But I definitely agree with CJ. He should not be 3 spots away from Rob Gronkowski. They're on completely different planes of existence. Richard Sherman, I mean, he's always going to be on this list, up near the top of this list. He's just a fantastic corner. I should know. I watch the guy twice a year. And of course, Earl Thomas, again, hate to love that, to hate that guy. He's just a really tough player. I hadn't gone down, this year with injury. I think that things would have been a little bit different for that Seattle defense. And he's going to come back probably healthy and probably another thorn in my side. So, look forward to seeing him again twice a year. I'm a little bit surprised that Roethlisberger is as high as he is. I'm guessing that he's getting some help from his weapons that he's got on that team. Because he's got some freaking amazing weapons on that team. So that's helping him out. Not to say he's not a good quarterback, but I don't think he's definitely better than a lot of the quarterbacks that have already been named on this list.
Maybe for this point in his career, absolutely. To your point about Travis Kelce, wouldn't say they're necessarily on different planes, but yes, Gronk is by far and away the top tier elite tight end that there is. But Travis Kelce, he did, here we are on a fantasy show. He did finish as the tight end 1 last year. So, he's good. He's been good throughout his career. His big problem has always been red zone work, and I think that's more of a product of his quarterback and that offense, which is why the Chiefs went ahead and they drafted themselves the quarterback potentially of the future in this year's draft, maybe taking that next step. So we'll see. And, obviously with Jeremy Maclin being gone now, he's going to continue to see the uptick in production that he saw while Jeremy Maclin was down last year. So, as long as he's behind Rob Gronkowski, I'm okay with it, which he was. Again, Earl Thomas, great. Mike Evans, I'm not surprised he was on the list last year, and I'm not surprised by where he finished. Landon Collins, I might even say that this is kind of a shot at him because 28, that's high. But he should have been higher. He was amazing last year. If you watched his tape, he blew my mind. I drafted him in our league of record, and he single-handedly won me weeks with his returns and his play and his bonuses that he was able to get me in our IDP league. Obviously, we all know LaShawn McCoy. He's arguably the best open field running back in the game. We talked about Travis Kelce, Joe Williams, probably the best tackle in football. Russell Wilson, we all know Russell Wilson, great extending plays. Gronk is Gronk. Ben Roethlisberger, again, he has the best weapons in the league, people could argue. And Richard Sherman, one of the top corners in the league. Love him or hate him, he is still a top-tier shutdown corner in the league. So, a well-deserved list, and I'm very excited to see the next 2 weeks when we get to see the final 20 names, and that's where it gets kind of interesting, and we get to figure out who was actually snubbed, because there's a couple names that I was expecting to have heard by now, and I'm not expecting to hear later on, so there's some people that we're going to have some fun time talking about who didn't make this list. But again, it's more of a popularity contest than anything, but it's fun to see. It's definitely interesting. It's conversation starting. Let's move on to the running back position, where I hate that this is news. Eddie Lacy met his next weight requirement, coming in at under 250 pounds. So he collected another $55,000 paycheck. So good for you, Eddie Lacy. Keep dropping that weight and probably therefore moving up our draft boards bit by bit. Also, Andre Ellington.
Better than Slim Fast.
There you go. Andre Ellington officially moved back to the running back position. We had reported earlier in the season he had been moved from running back to wide receiver in Arizona, and now they have made the move to return him back to his natural position of running back. Jason, you want to weigh in on here? This is your team.
Yeah, just a quick little weigh-in. This is mainly about depth. They have a lot of depth at receiver this year, bringing in that rookie, and then they've got a bunch of guys in that receiver room that look like they could make the team and play very well. Whereas if you look at the running back depth, not nearly as deep. You got Herman Williams and Elijah Penny behind David Johnson, unless they do what we call a time pickup and bring in a guy like Chris Johnson who's still out there waiting for a team. That'll pretty much be it, unless they bring Andre Ellington back over, and that's what they did.
All right. Does this affect anything you do? Do you think that this actually will make them less likely to pursue Chris Johnson?
It will, it will make them less likely to pursue Chris Johnson, although they still may do it anyway because Ellington's been injured so often, that it may just be risk mitigation. You bring in Johnson because you know that Ellington's probably going to get injured anyway.
Yeah, I it's definitely risk aversion, and it's not risk aversion to the starter, but obviously the backup. Andre Ellington, he's yet to play more than half a season as far as being a starter, right? I don't have his stats in front of me. I mean,
no, his first season he played okay. He made it through most of the season, but
was he the starter the whole time?
Yeah, he was a starter.
Okay, I didn't remember what his snap count was that year. So all right, interesting, and we'll move forward to the wide receiver position where. Headline news, this was the kind of breaking headline. Jeremy Maclin has signed with the Baltimore Ravens. Yay. He signed a 2-year deal. Details are not yet revealed. Obviously, this being my team, so I have a lot of thoughts here. And one of the things that really interested me, because if you guys listened to our previous show, I was saying that Jeremy Maclin, that's great, but he's more of the tier and the build of what we have already on the team with Mike Wallace and Brashad Perriman, those speedy guys who are the big play. I was thinking that we really needed that possession, red zone, sure-handed receiver, but reports are coming out that we are still expected to make a good run at Eric Decker, who they held on to much longer than anticipated. They officially released yesterday. So Eric Decker now a free agent. So, guys, what are your thoughts here? Obviously, we know the lead candidates, all reports coming out were obviously he visited the Bills and he visited the Ravens, but there was also a lot of links to Philadelphia. Initial reports saying that it was actually more between Baltimore and Philadelphia for him to land. Do you think this was, do you think this was the best spot for him for fantasy purposes?
It's hard to say. I know this is a fantasy show, so it's hard to say for fantasy wise. I think this is better for his career. I mean, because I think he has an opportunity to be able to shine with you guys. You guys got enough talent there as far as running backs goes, and then the other receivers. You got complementary pieces, but I don't really think you guys still have that dog when it comes to that wide receiver position. I know Mike Wallace is supposed to be that. But he has a good relationship with Joe Flacco, but I still think there's lots of still there to be improved when it comes to him and that offense. So I like Jeremy Maclin with you guys. I think that's a good complementary piece. He can be on the outside, and you can put Perriman in the slot, and see how that goes. Or you can switch it. Jeremy Maclin can play inside and out. So I think this is good.
I was going to say, I think that's what's going to be really interesting to see. And I think that obviously Jeremy Maclin comes in, he's going to be the number one. This is regardless of if we, this is me getting ahead of us maybe still pursuing Eric Decker. Obviously, that's still unknown.
Yeah.
But as it is today, I think Macklin's going to be the one. So for fantasy purposes, you have to give him a bump because he's going to a much higher passing and a much higher volume offense than he was in Kansas City. They throw a lot more in the red zones. They just, they're the highest volume throwing team of the last 2 years, my Ravens, which I really hope we stop doing because we are not built for that. But that's what we've been doing under our previous offensive coordinators.
Well, kind of are now. I mean, kind of getting there.
Well, regardless. But the thing is, we have 3 receivers of almost identical molds. Brashad Perriman in the slot would be interesting, but he is really built to be that outside guy. Crazy fast and the tallest of the 3 of them. He's got to take that next step. This will be his 3rd year, but really, he missed his entire rookie year and most of training camp last year. So he basically was learning as the season went on, and he was getting better as the season went. So I don't know if I think Brashad takes that big step this year, but I liked what I saw going through the year last year. Mike Wallace, another year building a rapport with Joe Flacco. He could maybe get back to the player of old, which landed him a massive contract leaving the Steelers after the 2012 season. We have a lot of speed. all three of these guys are very speedy wide receivers, so I think we can do a lot of trick formations because any one of these guys can all of a sudden just kick it into a 9 route, take it downfield, and they're going to have to respect every one of these guys' speed. So it's going to make it interesting, and if nothing else, all this speed is going to, I think, help our run game, of which we also have about 1 billion running backs. So a lot of clarity, of course, will come in training camp, but I think that regardless of that clarity, they're still going to be trying to really switch it up, do a lot of trick plays, a lot of misdirection, because that's just a lot of what the Ravens do. But Jeremy Maclin, of course, I think this was the best landing spot for him because he would have been the number 2 in Buffalo and a super crowded wide receiver core in Philadelphia. I think he would have been, he would have been probably the number 2 there as well behind Alshon Jeffrey and then competing with that speed threat of Torrey Smith. I think he's better than Torrey, but for fantasy, I like this landing spot for Jeremy Maclin. And, of course, I like it for my Ravens. And now let's see what happens with Eric Decker. Let's move on, though. Josh Doxson will reportedly play the Z role in Washington's offense this season. There was a lot of speculation who was going to fill in what role. And so this, for those of you who don't know at home, the Z role was the role that was being played primarily by Pierre Garçon last year. So more of the possession role, outside guy, which yielded Pierre Garçon 114 targets, 79 receptions, 1,041 yards, and only 3 touchdowns. That was the big letdown. So, obviously, this is a good vote of confidence because that's kind of the main consistent target in that offense. I mean, it's a lot to put on the shoulders of a guy who's essentially going to his rookie year because he missed, just like we talked about with Brashad Perriman in Baltimore, he missed his whole rookie season last year. What are your guys' thoughts on Josh Doxson?
Well, I don't know. Like I said, we haven't seen it yet, and it's nice he's going to get the opportunity. He's got crazy ability, from what the splashes that we've seen. We haven't seen much. So it's going to be interesting to see this entire offense, this Washington offense. Because, they got a really good quarterback, and they've got Pryor. This team could be really, really good or really meh this year.
I like to tell people when it comes to a situation like this, it sounds good, but you're really going to find out what this guy and what this team is about when you start getting to, mandatory mini camps and you start seeing the training camps going on, and especially when you start seeing preseason, because you see a guy like Dotson, this is basically going to be his first year playing in the NFL. Because he's going to be healthy, and he's rolling with the ones with Kirk Cousins and the rest of those receivers. So you're going to actually see what this kid's about, and if you like it, then you put a star next to it, and then when it's come draft season, you know what you're going to get in him. But for right now, you really don't know. So this is a question mark, and you want to come back to it on a later date.
To me, this was kind of surprising because I kind of thought he was going to fill more of the Deshaun Jackson role, being a little bit more outside speedy, and not for anything other than the fact that I thought Terrell Pryor was going to be that sure-handed kind of weapon. But if you read a lot of the reports saying that he looks like the fastest guy on the team, he spent a lot of time this offseason really working on his route running and building his lower body leg strength to increase his speed. So it looks like that kind of put him into that big play wide receiver role. So maybe that makes Terrell Pryor a little bit more boom-bust than people were expecting, but I honestly think that this is the best-case scenario for a player like Josh Doxson, who is going so late in the draft. We're not going to talk about him today, but because we're talking mid-round values, he's a sleeper steal at the end of the drafts. A ton of upside there. So, at that point, you're getting a guy in late double-digit rounds. What's the harm? If he doesn't work out, you drop him, and there's not a lot of remorse there. So this is exciting news to me, and this is something to definitely keep our eye on as we go into training camp. I'll be watching this very closely because he could be one of those guys who, as the season goes on, gets better and better and better. All the talent in the world. We could be looking at a flex guy with wide receiver 2, probably upside. So I like him. But let's move on. Tyreek Hill will reportedly not handle kickoff returns going forward with his increased role in the offense since the release of Jeremy Maclin. So, guys, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's to be expected. You see the release of Jeremy Maclin. You've been hearing the reports saying that he's going to get an increased role in the offense. So when you have a star player like this, you're going to take him off. Now, I think he's up to the level of like Antonio Brown. He doesn't do it all the time, but when he's back there in key moments, they put him back there. So, when this just so happens to happen, the star players whose stock started to rise in the offenses, those extra pieces that we were talking about that you can be able to get extra points from, that's probably going to start, they're going to probably start tapering off on that just to conserve him for the offense.
Well, my reports are that they specifically specified kickoff returns because he still is expected to have a role in punt return yards. So if you're in a big league like our league of record where you get rewarded for those return yards, just something to take into account for sure because you're going to be losing production on one end, but of course a bigger role in the offense should easily offset. Do you have any thoughts here, Jason? I know you're probably the highest on this guy out of all of us.
Yeah, I mean, it makes, like CJ said, it makes complete sense. This is a guy that is going to be an integral part of their offense now. Getting rid of Jeremy Maclin kind of sheds a light on the fact that they're really going to lean on this guy as their weapon this coming year. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all that they would kind of move him away from that. They don't want him to get hurt. They want him to be that guy in their offense. For me, this just pushes him even further up my rankings.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's right. I forgot that, CJ, you were actually the lowest on him. That was surprising to me. I remember we talked about that. Though I just brought up our consensus rankings for those of you wondering at home how I know that. So let's move on. I don't know. I lost the page. Somebody tell me what comes next.
Julian Edelman got a new 2-year deal. Worth. Nice job there, Griffin.
You're welcome.
Worth $11 million.
We are off the rails.
This is old news. We forgot to mention this last week.
This is something that we forgot to mention in last week's show. I think we skipped over it. So, obviously, there were a lot of reports and stipulation that with the acquisition of Brandon Cooks that maybe this was Julian Edelman's final season. The Patriots have a very long history of cutting guys right before they start to dip and, maybe or trading them and getting a lot more for them than they're worth. So this is definitely a vote of confidence to me for Julian Edelman going forward. Does this give you guys kind of, or let me just put it this way, does this affect the way you're looking to draft him in this season? Because obviously they shouldn't be looking to phase him out of the offense like some people were thinking they might.
No. I think this is just a data boy. Hey, you did good. What a heck of a catch in the Super Bowl.
Yes.
But fantasy-wise, doesn't do anything for me.
Neither good nor bad?
Neither good or bad. I mean, he's a heck of a player. I respect him. I like his competitiveness. But fantasy-wise, I've never been a big Julian Edelman fan as far as fantasy.
Well, he runs a lot of short intermediate routes, and then he, if he can break a couple tackles, that's where you get the big plays. But yeah, that's the guy he is, and that gets him hurt a lot. But yeah, that's why he goes as where he does in the middle rounds usually. So with that, let's move on to our topic of the day. Speaking of middle rounds, we're going to talk about our mid-round values. Now, we all highlighted a couple guys, and of course by mid-round, we're talking middle of your drafts. Typical draft, 15 rounds, so round 6 through 10. These are guys who you can get currently. Their average draft position is, and this is through Fantasy Football Calculator, through rounds 6 through 10. And guys we think will either end up probably going higher than that or just simply will drastically outperform this draft stock. So with that being said, does anyone have an itch to go first, or do you want to go down the list? What do you guys want to do?
Why don't you go first, man?
I will happily go first.
You got it.
I'm going to go with a guy who, honestly, when I saw that he was available in this range, kind of surprised me. But on the other hand, I know people are maybe some people feel burned from last year. Maybe other people haven't jumped on board yet because they've added weapons. I'm talking about Willie Snead. Now, wide receiver New Orleans, of course, he is currently going as the 9th pick in the 7th round. Now, the reason I'm very high on Willie Snead is some of the obvious. He has 117 extra targets in that offense, which are going to have to go somewhere. Obviously, these are snaps that are voided by Brandon Cooks no longer being in the offense, who was he was the number one, and then he was kind of supplanted as the number one and became the number two as the season went on. Obviously, the emergence of Michael Thomas through the year. And Willie Snead got hurt early on, never really reclaimed the role that he had in the beginning of the year. But those targets have to go somewhere, so I actually think that Willie Snead could be, I fully expect him to become the number 2 receiver on that team. He only had 72 receptions last year, and I think that with this added targets, he could easily move up. And he's a lot faster than people give him credit for. I think he could easily fill that role. Obviously, they brought in Ted Ginn Jr. to replace Brandon Cooks as the outside speed, stretch the field element. But Willie Snead, he's got that speed to be able to do that too. We've seen it multiple times throughout his first 2 seasons in the league. So I think he's going to have an increased role while he's healthy. I think that he has, again, the speed to fill the Brandon Cooks role in the offense, which obviously got a lot of targets. Whether he holds them all in or not will remain to be seen. We know he has good hands, but I do believe he will be the wide receiver 2 after being the wide receiver 3 last year. Do you guys have any thoughts about Willie Snead?
I think it's a good pick. I feel like I mentioned this guy, so I like how you paying attention and you got your eyes open.
Jason? Can I steal all the credit there, CJ?
For me, I don't have a lot to think about Willie Snead. I need to see a little bit more out of him, and obviously I haven't followed him all that closely, so I need to see some more.
All right. Well, with that being said, of course, the touchdowns also to be spread out, but I think Coby Fleener is going to be more of the red zone beneficiary. I know you guys don't like that, but that's honestly what I think.
And then you lost everybody.
Nope.
Just lost.
Nope, because I'm open-minded. I'm looking at now we're getting off topic. I'm thinking of Coby Fleener as a post-hype sleeper. I think we're all too high on him last year, going to a new team, learning a new offense, being expected to do a lot, and I think that based on his track record throughout his career and a second year in that offense with a rapport with obviously Drew Brees, one of the best quarterbacks in the league or in NFL history, I think that he will take that next step this year. That's what I mean. I could be wrong, and of course, watching training camp will be very telling. But I think most of the touchdowns that are voided from Brandon Cooks are going to be going to Coby Fleener. Obviously, Ted Ginn's going to take some. So I mean, maybe we're talking another one or two to Willie Snead. I would completely expect that to be the case. I mean, obviously, he only had 4 last year, which was his career high. He had 3 in his rookie year. But I mean, I don't believe I've statted him out yet. I'll have to bring up my stats, but I could see him easily getting 6 touchdowns this year. I think that's totally doable.
I love how you tell us that we're going off the rails as we're going off the rails. You're like, all right, here we go.
Here we go.
The captain of the going off the rails over here.
You guys steered the ship right off the rails, and I just kept going. So, CJ, you go next.
Is that an iceberg?
All I said was you just lost everybody, and then you just had to defend your argument.
I have to defend myself. That's what we're doing.
That was you.
This is my guy. I've got to defend it.
Yeah, sure it is. Well, my guy is Samaje Perine, running back for the Washington Redskins. As far as the backfield that he's working with right there, the only threat that I see is probably Rob Kelly. He's lost a little weight, but the Redskins like this guy. They picked him up in the 4th round. He has established quarterback and Kirk Cousins there, and as long as Kirk Cousins is there, I see the flow in the offense moving good, and the offense is moving good when it comes to passing. It's going to open up a lot of running lanes for him, and you watch his tape, man, he's a beast back there. He's like a little pocket Hercules, like MGD was when he was playing for the Jaguars. So I like this kid's upside, and he's that last. Like, when it comes to those 5 running backs from this year's draft, man, he's that last guy that you could be able to get that you can project forward, that he particularly could be a starter in that offense. If you missed out on those other 4 guys, you see him there. You see him around the 8th round. I think that's a good value for him, and this is a projected starter, and I like Samaje Perine for the Redskins.
Jason?
As far as Samaje Perine, or do I do mine?
Samaje Perine.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I definitely see Perine as somebody that could definitely take that starting position. I mean, I think he's a more talented back than Robert Kelly. I like Robert Kelly, so I feel bad saying that, but I mean, you got to be honest. Looking at the kid's abilities, he's a big back. He can do a lot of different things. I was pretty high on him coming into the draft. So, I think that would be amazing value. If you can pick him up in the 8th round, that's probably going to be your starter by the end of the year. So you're going to have a starting running back that you picked up in the 8th.
Yeah. The bottom line, the Washington Redskins, they were not efficient in the red zone while running the ball last year. They actually ranked 29th in red zone touchdown efficiency, and I think that's a lot of why they brought in Samaje Perine. Obviously, we talk about how they have draft stock in him. Robert Kelly, an undrafted free agent, but Samaje Perine, a 4th-round pick, so a bit more investment there. Obviously not. It's like a 1st, 2nd round, so it's like, okay, this guy's getting the keys to the castle, but we all kind of expect that this will probably be a competition in training camp. I could honestly see this being a timeshare to start, and then as Perine starts to develop, because I agree, I like the tape better. I think he has much higher upside than Rob Kelly. Though I like Rob Kelly, but I think Perine will eventually become the starter. And, of course, 12 touchdowns last year coming out of the Big 12. I mean, he had a pretty good season, and obviously got him a 4th-round pick. So I definitely like this. This could be a guy who, especially if he becomes this full-fledged starter or Rob Kelly gets hurt, that you're going to be getting late that could return very good value. And will probably be startable from the point you draft him right away. So I do like Pirine, though we'll have to watch training camp and make sure that he actually earns himself some role in that offense and isn't simply coming in to spell Rob Kelly. But I think we all agree that that's probably not going to be the case. But, it's the NFL. Yeah. We could be wrong. Training camps haven't even started yet.
It's happened.
It has happened. Jason, why don't you go ahead and go next?
Alrighty. My guy is actually kind of in the same mold as a Samaje Perine. It's Frank Gore, currently going in the 7th round. He's the number 1 running back over there in Indianapolis, and I don't see that changing this year yet. And he's consistent. I mean, he's finished as either a number 1 running back or a very high number 2 every single year, pretty much. He's a solid performer. He doesn't get hurt. Bruising back. He's a guy that can score, run between the tackles, and score for you. So I really like Frank Gore. Like I said, if you pick him up in the 7th round, again, you're looking at a possible to probable running back 1.
Yeah,
it's hard for me to get behind Frank Gore, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I mean, the guy, you think that Father Time is there to pin him, and he always kicks out like Hulk Hogan. So it's tough. But I just can't do it, man. I gotta believe that this is the year that we're not gonna see that same guy that squeezes out another 1,000 yards for you. So I can't get behind that pick by Jason.
But you have been the guy who's been down on him by far out of the three of us all off season. But this is also a prime example as to why he's currently going where he's going. So I mean, like we said, he's currently going in the 7th round, 8th pick of the 7th round. I think that could be either a steal, as Jason is saying, or this could be about what he's worth depending on how it works out. Obviously, they drafted a rookie in the 4th round yet again in Marlon Mack, who is not a Frank Gore clone at all. So I mean, he's much more of a speedy guy. He can catch the ball, which Frank Gore does as well. But he's described as a slashing running back. So different. Could be a timeshare, whatever the case may be. And again, this is what training camps are for. And this is why I think Frank Gore, who has ended as a running back 1 for the last however many seasons, I don't have it in front of me right now. Obviously, the last 2 while being in Indianapolis could easily be either a guy who, if Father Time's catching up, and he did kind of fall off last year, maybe he finishes as an RB2 for the first time in a couple years. Maybe if this becomes a timeshare, or he eventually does completely fall off and he becomes the backup, just the red zone back, maybe he's not even flex worthy, and that's kind of the thing that you're gonna have to weigh. And this is why, if we say this all the time, and we haven't really been saying it much, and we need to start saying it more. If you are drafting right now, stop it. There's too many question marks, and this is why you wait. I know we all want fantasy football to be here. If you didn't love fantasy football, you wouldn't be listening to a fantasy football podcast in the beginning of June. You wouldn't be. But the bottom line is you have to wait, because there are so many questions, and you could be wasting a pick, which we could have clear vision on what the situation is going to be in another 2 months. So just pump the brakes, wait. Frank Gore could easily be a steal in the 7th round, or this could be exactly where he's worth going, and that's kind of the hang-up. We don't know. There's a lot of question marks. But they've done a lot to improve that team. Their reports coming out, they are convinced that they have fixed their offensive line, which I don't think we all necessarily see, but if they believe it, so be it. Let's move on. My next guy is Corey Davis, wide receiver, Tennessee, obviously a rookie. He is currently going as the 6th pick in the 8th round. Now, on one hand, I see a lot of people thinking, okay, rookie, 8th round, that makes a lot of sense. Rookie wide receiver. And a lot of analysts out there will tell you, don't reach for these rookies, because they are, in fact, rookies. Obviously, goes without saying. But bottom line, we're talking about a guy who was a monster, which is why he went as high as he did in this year's draft, and he was a monster in college. His final year in Western Michigan, he got 1,500 receiving yards and 19 touchdowns. So even if he only produces half that production in the NFL, we're still talking about a solid wide receiver 2. Maybe if you're in a bigger league, a flex option, definitely a wide receiver 2 in a big league. So, and of course, he's filling that Rashad Matthews role. Rashad Matthews was very good last year with a lot of the targets. Rashad Matthews, obviously, he had 65 receptions, 945 yards, 9 touchdowns, finishing him, depending on your scoring format, right around a low-end wide receiver 1. And, with all these extra weapons in the offense, who's to say that Marcus Mariota doesn't take that next step? Both these guys are able to feast. Because Marcus Mariota, he's been very good, but he hasn't finished the season yet. He hasn't had 4,000 yards. He hasn't thrown for, his career high last year, 26 touchdowns. That's a decent amount, but you want your top-tier fantasy quarterbacks to be throwing above 30 touchdowns a year. So who's to say he can't take the next step? Obviously, Delaney Walker's there. Rashad Matthews is still there. I like a lot of what's going on around Corey Davis, who should be, as the season goes on, definitely the focal point of this offense because the talent is outstanding. Also, they're not going to be able to double or triple team the wide receivers anywhere because they have to respect the running game. They have arguably the best running back duo in the league in DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry. So it's just a perfect situation with a young developing quarterback who can really have a nice rapport here that they can develop going through the years. I mean, if we're talking dynasty drafts, please believe Corey Davis needs to be one of the top picks in your draft. But for redraft, I do really like him. And I think through training camp and preseason, he's going to be one of those guys that he's just going to start climbing up the board. So if you see him staying here, this is going to be an absolute steal in the 8th round because I see him, like I said, definitely returning at least flex option worthy production. But I could easily see him taking, rookies are rookies. He has to adjust to the next level, but I could easily see him finishing as a wide receiver 2. He definitely has the talent to flash and give you some wide receiver 1 weeks as well. So I like Corey Davis. What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I really like Corey Davis. Obviously, the best receiver coming out of the draft. Going to a team that is committed to throwing the ball better than they have, and they have a great option in DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry. So that's going to open up the rest of the field. I do really like him. 8th round. The fact that he is a rookie makes me kind of think that might be okay to take him in the 8th round. I don't know if I'd want to take him much, much higher, just because he's still got a lot of catching up to do as far as speed and size in the NFL. However, like you mentioned, he definitely could be a steal, especially around the middle to the end of the year.
And that's what makes him a mid-round value. Hey, full circle. CJ, any thoughts?
Yep.
Yeah, man. Everything that you were saying about Marcus Mariota taking that next step, I think Corey Davis is going to be a big part of being able to do that for him. He's such a polished receiver in and out of his routes. I mean, he creates space so ridiculously, man. And with Marcus Mariota being a mobile quarterback, and you saw those highlights for him in Oregon, all he has to do is just get the defense, just to look at him a second longer. That's Corey Davis hitting them with an out route or quick with his feet in a slant or, coming back to the ball like I love seeing receivers do when they have that chemistry with their quarterback. So Corey Davis is prime this year. I'm actually bold enough to say that to have one of the best rookie wide receiver seasons that we've ever seen because he's that good of a player. And you have a dynamic quarterback and a guy like Marcus Mariota, man. Those are 2 dangerously qualities that's going to just put up some great fantasy numbers for you. So I really like that pick, Griffin.
Yeah, I mean, 19 touchdowns, even if it's in college, that's a number you have to respect. He can create separation and contest catches. I mean, so he's going to get some good production. I also, we talked about this in previous episodes, and I think our tight end rankings. I also think Delaney Walker is slightly on the decline, so I think some of his production and red zone efficiency is going to be going Corey Davis's way as well. So I really like Corey Davis. So in the 8th round, that's great value. Just saying. Yeah. CJ, go ahead.
Well, next guy is Golden Tate, man. We've spoken to him about him before in previous shows, man. But one of the reasons why I like him, man, is what I saw him and Matthew Stafford be able to do towards the end of last season. We spoke about this before. He didn't really have a good start of the season, but he started to come around about that midway point and for the rest of the season. So you look at those stats that he has, 91 receptions, over 1,000 yards, averaging 11.8 yards per carry, man, and then 4 touchdowns. So you're really looking for, the yardage is good, but those touchdowns, you really want that to go up, and I feel like this year they can be able to do it. They're getting better in the running game. We're getting Amir Abdullah back, and that's a speedy, shifty back that defense have to account for, so they can't put all their focus on the wide receivers. I see Marvin Jones, playing a lot better than what he did. So if that's the case, then you're gonna have two good dynamic receivers on the outside, meaning that you can't double them. So then Golden Tate is gonna be able to get more space, be more open, and have more opportunity to be able to score more fantasy points. So I see him getting probably about the same amount of yards. I mean, not yards. I'm sorry, receptions. A little more yards, definitely some more touchdowns. And if you see this guy, I'm sorry, my page is going slow. If you see this guy in the 6th round, man, this is a guy that you might want to consider looking at if you start to fill out your board. You already got your 2 running backs, and you start looking at a receiver. This is a guy that you probably should look at.
Jason?
Yeah, I like Golden Tate a lot. He's just consistent. He's just always there. He's somebody that you can pretty much rely on to have a pretty high floor, and that's what you want to look for is guys with high floor that are going to return on value and then have the opportunity to be even better. And I think CJ is absolutely right. He's got the opportunity this year to be even better than he's been up to this point. So good pick. I like it.
Yeah, Golden Tate, if you guys were with us this time last year, you heard all the reports that we were having about how he was having a hard time picking up the offense, whatever the situation was. It did take him some time to get going. Now, a lot of people are, and if you watch the tape, he was being taken away in some of those early games, and Marvin Jones, of course, was thriving. Obviously, Marvin Jones' Week 3 explosion, 205 yards and 2 touchdowns, that kind of caused defenses to shift back towards him, and Week 5 is where the transition kind of happened because in Week 6, Golden Tate basically took off and never looked back. He had a couple down weeks throughout the season, but if you actually statted him out, his average from Week 6 through the rest of the season, he finished as a wide receiver 1. I mean, he finished right in the middle of the wide receiver 2s as it was, depending on your scoring format, of course. But, I mean, this is a guy who is clearly the top target and has the best rapport with the quarterback, Matthew Stafford, in Detroit. So I love Golden Tate in the 6th round because you could be easily getting a guy who can return well above that value. So I agree. Golden Tate, he is a great option, a guy who people are really down on, and I'm not really sure why because he had some great performances throughout the season. So keep your eye on Golden Tate. He could be definitely a guy worth picking up. I mean, look at his one thing that stands out to me. A guy that you can get in the 6th round, which had a game where he put up 165 yards and a touchdown, and another week where he put up 145 yards and a touchdown, 122 yards and another week. I mean, this guy clearly gets a lot of production. So, again, Golden Tate, a lot of upside there. Go get him. Jason, that means you're up next, right?
That would be me.
There you go.
My next one shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Larry Fitzgerald, currently going in the top of the 6th round.
Shocking.
It counts. No brainer for me. I mean, this is the number 1 target in a high-powered offense. He led the league in receptions a year ago. This is a guy that Carson Palmer is always looking for. He's always looking to get the ball in this man's hands. He's there at crunch time. He's going to pick up touchdowns. He's going to pick up first downs. He's going to get the lion's share of the passing targets. And then the question is behind him, what happens? And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But anyway, Larry Fitzgerald, number 1 target in Arizona. He's going to continue to be the number 1 target in Arizona. And if this is his final year, which I assume it is, then I would expect to see him want to go out kind of with a bang. So I think this is going to be an interesting year for him.
Oh, Larry Fitzgerald, man, he's a legend, man. I like the guy. His whole career is, ridiculous. This is his second shot at a quarterback can be able to do something for him, getting the ball. So, their offensive line wasn't that healthy last season, and you saw what happened when it comes to that. So, those guys are getting back healthy. So they could keep Carson Palmer upright. And if that's the case, and that happens, this is a good pick for you to be able to pick up. I mean, just like Jason said, he led the league in receptions last year. You can't not look at those numbers and think that was a fluke. You got to be the man to be able to do that. So I like this pick by Jason.
Yeah, 107 receptions. That's obviously exactly what you want to hear for PPR, and I see no reason to think that he's going to return much less than that. My biggest problem with Larry Fitzgerald is something we've talked about extensively, is for the last 2 years, he started off really strong and then kind of fallen off throughout the year. So I think that's what has people scared off for him, and that's why he's not going higher, because he finished right in the middle, actually on the higher end, depending on the size of your league, 12-team or larger, right in the higher tier of the wide receiver twos. So Larry Fitzgerald, even at his age, even with all the stuff going on in that offense, still very productive. Obviously in PPR, he takes that extra bump. So he could easily return on that. His age is kind of a factor to me, but we know he has a carved-out role in that offense. He's going to be used. He's going to get a lot of targets. Out of those targets, he's going to haul a lot of them in, and hopefully he can return more for touchdowns this year. Obviously, only 6 touchdowns this past year, which was kind of a letdown, again, with the pace he was on to begin the year. But I could easily see him getting back to where he's been the last couple of healthy years, where he was like 9 or 10 touchdowns on the season. I think I currently have him statted out as getting 8 touchdowns, which would be great if he can get over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. That is a steal in the mid-rounds. So, and especially in the 6th round, early mid-rounds, but still, great steal. My final guy is John Brown, coming from the same exact offense.
Yeah.
Hey, Arizona! I know CJ's probably not wild about this, but John Brown, look.
Of the city.
Thank you, CJ. John Brown is that guy who's been primed to take that next step for the last 2 years. And he got a lot better in 2014. He really kind of broke out. If you watch his college tape, Jason and I remember we were talking about him well before the beginning of that season, that we're going to watch this guy. Yeah. Crazy fast, really good hands, surprisingly good route runner, and he went out his rookie year, and obviously Arians doesn't really like to use his rookies very much, but he still went out there, put up almost 700 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's great. His next year, he put up 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. So there's your progression. He did miss a game, but also the one thing I want to point out, and we've talked about this in weeks past when we've talked about John Brown or that offense, John Brown easily could have had another 3 or 4 touchdowns on that season. He was so fast that he was blowing past defenders and safeties where they had no choice but to literally tackle him before he could catch the ball or drag him down, holding, whatever the case may be, because otherwise it would have been a score straight to the house. He is a freakish athlete. Now, this all being said, he's going in as the 3rd pick in the 10th round. Why is that? Well, as I'm sure you know, he's coming off of a not-so-great year last year, and none of that was really any fault of his own. He was injured last year. He was dealing with the sickle cell trait, which affected all of his leg strength, his cardio, a lot of different things throughout his body. They say that they have corrected that problem. He also, obviously this is much more recently, he had a surgery to remove a cyst from his spine, obviously affecting his play as well. So, finally healthy. I have to believe he makes that progression. Also, big point, this time last year we were saying, it's Larry Fitzgerald, and then who's the number 2? Is it John Brown? Is it Michael Floyd? Michael Floyd's more of the big play guy. He's the bigger receiver. He can do a lot more stuff, maybe better in the red zone. John Brown, that super fast guy who, Carson Palmer likes to throw it deep to. And now Michael Floyd is gone. So with Michael Floyd gone, there's going to be an uptick in his targets and his production. There has to be. These targets have to go somewhere, and it's clearly Larry Fitzgerald, John Brown. Larry Fitzgerald, you're getting in the 6th. John Brown, you're getting in the 10th. That value is insane. And look, all the pieces are there for him to reproduce that 2015 season. Again, 101 targets, 65 catches, 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. I think that's the baseline if he can stay healthy. I think he can do much better than that. And if you're talking about that value in the 10th round, that's wide receiver 2 borderline production right there, if not borderline. That is wide receiver 2 production. Depending on how the position plays as a whole, could be much higher than that. And again, you add another 3 to 4 touchdowns onto that, more targets, more receptions, more yards. Of course, this is all contingent on him staying healthy. He's had a bad couple years, but most of these were kind of fluky injuries. He did, and of course, everyone's going to point this out, he suffered a hamstring injury so far in OTAs, which already has people like, oh, there it is, the injury, that's the trend, I'm not touching him. again, this is why he could be a value because, again, this was described as a minor injury. So, by all accounts, it should not be something that he sustains through the season. He should be good to go by training camp. And this is actually good news to me because this will help keep his ADP down. So, if you can get him, even if he rises a little bit, if I can get John Brown anywhere in these mid rounds, especially 8 through 10, I am jumping on the John Brown train. I will ride that roller coaster because he will give you week-winning performances when healthy. I love John Brown. What are you guys' thoughts?
Yeah. This is one of the best kept secrets, I think, in Arizona is John Brown because if you saw 2015, he had a phenomenal season, but that was, and they said at the end of that season, Bruce Arians came out to talk about everything, and he talked about the fact he had 2,000-yard receivers, almost 3, and said, John Brown is just scratching the surface. This isn't even as good as he could possibly be. He is an extremely good route runner. As Griffin already mentioned, the speed is just ridiculous, and that year, absolutely. If you watch those games, he had at least 2 holding penalties on him, people holding him to try to keep him from getting down the field on him every single game. And I'm not talking about, like, close to the line of scrimmage. I'm talking about 30, 40 yards down the field. So this guy is absolutely a beast. I think eventually he's going to be the number 1 guy in Arizona when Larry Fitzgerald finally does decide to hang it up. I definitely see John Brown as being the target there, sort of in an Antonio Brown type of role for Arizona.
And we don't want to give the impression that he's a boom-bust, 9-route runner. He can run the whole route tree. He's very good. He's a shorter guy, so maybe that's why he's not featured as much in a lot of those patterns, but he can do it all. He's a very good wide receiver, and like you said, very, very underrated. He's a very well-kept secret, which I think is another reason why he's down this low. If healthy, holy crap, that is a steal.
Mm-hmm.
CJ, do you have anything you want to add, or do you want to move on to your guy?
I think you guys covered it.
All right, why don't you move on to your final guy?
My last guy is Paul Perkins, man, for the New York Giants. You saw what the New York Giants did last year. They didn't really use him. He only had 1 game start last year. Got 112 carries, 456 yards, 0 touchdowns. So that's something that you probably not really liking, but you can still be encouraged by that because you realize that Rashad Jennings and Shane Vereen was the 2 backs, that was in front of him. And those 2 guys, I think they basically showed what they're capable of. Jennings was an okay running back, but the guy, the shining star in that, running back core, when you did see him be able to get some time, was Paul Perkins. So I see that he's going to get an increased role this year, even with all the additional targets that they have going on there with Brandon Marshall, of course, Odell, and then you got Sterling Shepard. I still see Eli, when he gets into trouble, he's going to try to check it down, and that check down option that's going to be utilized more this year is going to be Paul Perkins, and that's good. And for all I know, we still get points for receiving, right, for running back. So I think that's going to be good that you should look at, something that you could be able to look later on in drafts. So if you see him in the 7th round, you want to take a shot on him, man, go take a shot of him and watch his role get increased going into training camp and definitely in the preseason.
Yeah. The big thing for him, maybe this will be like the Melvin Gordon effect, where he didn't score any touchdowns in his rookie year, then he came back and gave us a bunch of touchdowns. They're going to be spending so much time and effort covering the wide receivers and all the pass catchers in New York that, Paul Perkins could easily be facing some diminished lines. And they did upgrade the offensive line a bit. It wasn't anything like overwhelmingly impressive that they did, but they have upgraded the offensive line in New York. They've obviously upgraded the offensive weapons, adding Brandon Marshall, drafting Evan Ingram, Sterling Shepard probably taking that next step. Obviously, you have Odell Beckham Jr. What else can you say? So, whoa, that was loud. So, I think that he could easily be a guy to take a huge step, as we now know he will be the starter, and he had to kind of earn that role as the season went on. So I think full season, with all those other distractions on the offense, he could easily be a guy who could be a steal, and you could get, obviously, he's going in the 7th round right now. He could easily be drafted and be started as a flex guy with all the upside in the world. Jason, what's your thoughts?
I really like Paul Perkins. This is a really good pick for CJ. Paul Perkins showed last year, anytime I was watching this team last year, and I would watch Jennings, and he just underwhelmed. Wasn't able to do much. He looked like he was looking for the ground as soon as there was any contact. Jennings looked like he was kind of looking to hit the ground. Perkins was the other side of that coin. He was hitting people, and he was trying to run through them.
Yes.
I love to see that in a running back. He kind of earned the respect of his teammates that year. So I love the fact that he's the starter. He gets a chance to kind of prove himself. And in round 7, as the starting running back for that team, I think this could be very, very good, especially given the fact that they've got all these passing weapons. So the secondaries are going to have to stay out of the box and worry about where the ball's going in the air. And then all of a sudden, here comes Paul Perkins through the middle, and he's probably not going to get touched until he gets into that secondary. So I really like this pick, and I think that, again, if this offensive line plays better than it did last year, that could be a monster pick for you in the 7th round.
And the team showed confidence in him. They didn't go out. They didn't draft They didn't pick up Adrian Peterson, Jamal Charles, Eddie Lacy. They drafted a running back, but it wasn't until the 4th round in Wayne Gallman. So I don't think he's going to be supplanting him anytime soon. It's an awesome opportunity and a guy who, again, people are clearly sleeping on. We're almost out of time, Jason. Your final guy.
My final guy is Deshaun Jackson. Usually I like to stay away from players that are going to a new team, but in this particular case, I really like Deshaun Jackson. He's just a solid player. He's got speed. Even at his age, he's still just a speedy guy. He's going to a high-powered offense that has some really great options at tight end. You look at O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate, and a running back in Doug Martin and Jaquiz Rogers. So that's going to open up the rest of the field for Jackson to exploit with that speed of his. Also, they've got one heck of a receiver over there in Mike Evans, who also is going to suck up a lot of that coverage. So I think that the odd man out is going to end up being Deshaun Jackson. He's going to get an opportunity for a lot of one-on-ones, and then he's just going to burn some people. So I think this is a great value for you in middle rounds.
Yeah, Deshaun Jackson, this is easily the best tandem he's ever been a part of.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I would say he went to a high-powered offense or that his presence and other additions that they made this offseason has turned it into a high-powered offense. But either way.
What I said was it is going to be a high-powered offense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So either way, it's a high-powered offense.
Absolutely, and they're going to be
shots.
pulling... No shots. Obviously, Mike Evans is going to be pulling the coverage. Deshaun Jackson could feast. It's all going to matter, like what you're talking about with Corey Davis. Does Jameis Winston take that next step? He's got all the weapons and all the opportunity in the world, and I have to assume that he does because this is as good as it's going to get for him. Any additional thoughts that you want to add, CJ?
Besides sit down and be humble, yes, I do. Deshaun Jackson, I think his presence in this offense is going to be a very good one. I can see him and Jameis. I think they're going to hit it off just nicely, man. Just to be able to give that other option so Mike Evans doesn't have to get double teamed. That's a plus. And then, just like Jason said, you got all those other additional pieces there with, you're going to get Doug Martin back, later after 3 games, after his suspension. He's going to be a good piece. You got that 2 tight end set. That's going to be a good piece there. So, and then you got Deshaun Jackson coming in the mix. And, Jameis Winston likes to throw the ball down deep. Deshaun Jackson, that's one of his specialties. So I see this working out. Now as far as, how productive he can be in this offense, that's going to be, to be determined. You got to see what's going on with that because just like you said, all those additions that are there, that's a plus, but it can also be a minus for you too, just because how much volume is he going to be able to get in this offense. But I'm still, optimistic that he can be able to, get a big production and a big part of this offense and be productive for you and be a good pick for you in those later rounds.
Yeah, and even if he continues to be kind of what he was in Washington as kind of a boom bust, low floor, high ceiling guy, he's still a great value in the middle rounds. Yeah. Again, 5th pick of the 7th. That's a fine place to take someone like Deshaun. All right, so that's going to do it for us today. Please make sure you guys tune in on Friday where we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Could be fun. We're going to get into a little bit more of an advanced topic, I think. Also, remember, Listener League iTunes Review Challenge live. All you have to do is go over to iTunes, subscribe to the show, rate, review, give us obviously some feedback is great. Once those come through, sometimes they take a couple days to post. Like we know a couple people have already told us that they've posted. I've been monitoring them. They haven't posted yet. As soon as we get them, we'll read them on the show. We'll give you shout outs. It's half the fun. Again, The Fantasy Football Fanatics on iTunes. That's all you got to do. And then you can send us emails or give us your email and Twitter so we can reach you afterwards. Send us what you want the league to be. Have a conversation. That's half the fun. Remember, subscribe wherever you are, not just iTunes, also Stitcher, Podcast Addict, YouTube, everywhere, every Tuesday, Friday, where we will be back. And if you need that bonus episode every single week, head over to patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. This week, we're going to be getting into a little bit of IDP talk, so that should be a lot of fun. You can follow us also individually. I am at GPalmerFFF. CJ's at CJHickman89. Jason is at JasonCabrera13. And you can always join us on Facebook at facebook.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics, where we do some fun posts and a little bit of different stuff. So, any parting thoughts before we sign off, guys?
Guys, just once again, thanks for all the love and the growth on our YouTube page and all of our other platforms.
All right.
And shout out to the Golden State Warriors. Congratulations,
World
champs.
Yeah,
Basketball
man. Thanks
talk.
for winning me that money, baby.
All right. Well, we are out of here. Everyone, take care. We will see you on the Patreon show. If not, we will see you on Friday. Bye.
Life in the fast lane, moving at the speed of life, and I can't slow down. Only got a gallon in the gas tank, but I'm almost at the finish line, so I can't stop now. I don't really know where I'm headed, just enjoying the ride. Just gonna roll till I drop and ride till I die.